History here, and today a video for you aspiring veterans who are wondering which keystone should I be selecting for my build, because it has been a time-honored tradition among veterans a little bit longer in the past, not so much currently, but there was a time once upon a time where many veterans did not choose a keystone because the keystones were that weak, or maybe they weren't even underpowered or weak, but they were hard to understand which one would provide a tangible benefit to X build. And so that's what I want to focus on today is if you're building towards using a certain type of weapon, or this is the idea behind how your playstyle is going to work for your build, which one of these is going to be your best bet? Because there are some different arguments to be made for each. And I think at this point, despite the fact that I put out a build less than a week ago that showed no keystones, that was for, making it as simple as possible for people who hit the bong a little bit too much. But this is probably a bad way to play generally with the veteran, because the keystones now are so powerful. Yes, they'll add a little bit of complication to your life, but that complication is going to come with a massive, massive uptick in power for the class. So you should definitely be knowing which of these is the appropriate one and putting it in your build. So let's get started here. Before I do formally get started though, note that my hovering over these stats is going to give me a lot more information. Why is that? You might be wondering. Well, it's because I have a mod that's called Enhanced Descriptions. Enhanced Descriptions is lay epic Reddit bacon. Like, this mod rocks. It tells you everything that it would normally not tell you, because Fat Shark descriptions are dog shit. So go get this mod if you're a PC player and install it, and it'll help you understand the game, because knowledge of the game systems underpins pretty much everything else about the game, right? If you know the game systems, you'll become a better player just by knowing that stuff. So yeah, do that. And if you don't know how to install mods and stuff, well, then you should go look at my tutorials. And also you should subscribe and like the video and tell me what you want a video on next in the comments. Okay, now let's get back to the actual talents thing, and we'll start with our Sniper Keystone, Marksman's Focus. Marksman's Focus is a talent that gives range weak spot kills a stacking buff. So when you kill with a range weak spot hit, it's going to give 3 stacks of focus. Those stacks go up to 10, and they last 5 seconds. And after 5 seconds elapses, they fall off one at a time. So if you're stacked at 10, it's going to take you, count them, 50 seconds to lose all these stacks, meaning this is a very high uptime stack count. Now, the stacks will continue to be refreshed or added to. Of course, if you get another weak spot kill, you're all good and it'll go back up. But you can also get a refresh by just simply getting a weak spot hit. So let's go ahead and get a kill here, right? So now I didn't actually allocate the talent point. That would probably help me in order to demonstrate the focus. Okay, so there we go. Now we've got 3 stacks, right? And now we're at 6 stacks. However, my shot doesn't need to kill in order to get the benefit. So you see that didn't kill, but it kept me at 6 stacks. And this applies to melee as well. So you can keep your stacks at 6 by getting melee headshots. And that is all good, fine, and dandy. You cannot gain stacks by getting melee headshots, but you'll stay at 6. And note that these benefits, the benefits that come with these stacks, does not actually apply to melee either. It is only for ranged stuff. So it's really good that they changed this, so you don't have to worry about swapping to melee. Just make sure you're getting a couple of hits in melee in there, and you're going to extend these stacks for a very long time. They'll be there when you need them. Now, what do these stacks provide? Well, you can get up to 10, and that means that at maximum, you'll get 7.5% range finesse strength times 10, which is 75%, and 10% reload speed. And finesse, as it says right here, finesse increases your weak spot damage and critical damage, which is massive. So if you hit a critical weak spot, let's look at the revolver here, for instance. If you hit a critical shot, right, we're going to take this number and we're going to add a massive 75% multiplier on top of it. And if you hit this number here, we're going to add it adds 75% here and 75% here, and this is not the doubling of those, but it's like 60% more than whatever 75% is. That's sort of how the math comes out. So it ends up being like over 100% additional damage if this is fully stacked up at 10 stacks even. And so this is a massive, massive increase. Finesse strength is huge for weapons that get critical hits and do direct damage headshots. If you're going for headshots and critical hits on direct damage weapons, this is a banger, especially if the weapon has a slow reload speed, which, I mean, pretty much describes to a T the revolver here. The revolver is a great candidate for this one. Now let's check out its augments down here, starting with Long Range Assassin, really easy to explain. 5 more maximum focus stacks, going from 10 to 15, which means not only do we have a deeper sort of reservoir of these stacks, you know, if they fall off, if like 3 of them fall off in 15 seconds, you forgot to get some headshots or missed some headshots or there's nobody around or whatever, well, you're good. You've still got 12 of them left, and it takes a full like minute and a half to lose all of them. So you're completely good with this. And that also means that only, you know, 5 headshot kills will get you to those 15 stacks, at which point also you will have 15% reload speed and 112.5 range finesse strength, which is huge. Like, this talent is so powerful. This keystone is so powerful, even with just these 2 nodes. Now over here, we've got chink in their armor, 15% rending when at or over 10 stacks of focus. So rending is generally a not all that valuable stat. And the reason I'm saying it's not that valuable is because 15% rending, it is not very much. 15% rending, for instance, on a weapon like the revolver, what it's going to do is it's going to add damage to your armored types. So right now, the damage or rending is at 50%, or effective damage is at 50%. So we would go from, if you look at your number here of 504 and you look at your number here, that's your effective damage reduction against armor. So we would only be doing half as much. What this will do is it'll raise us from doing 50% damage to 65% damage. So it's an increase, right? It's going to increase your damage by about 30%. However, it's probably not going to make a massive difference in the revolver specifically. And so yeah, it's probably not worth it on many of the weapons that fall into this category, because 15% just isn't enough to make a really, really big jump in terms of damage. It doesn't allow weapons that would be good here, like for instance our vigilant auto guns, right? These weapons are so poor at carapace, it will effectively like double their damage, because as you can see here, this weapon has less than 1/4 of its efficacy. This is like a 0.25 multiplier, and that would raise it to like 0.4 or something. However, it's still going to be doing almost no damage. So yeah, this isn't enough rending to ever really be a worthwhile talent. And if you're playing with the revolver specifically, you just take hand cannon on there and get 60% rending, which is a lot. That'll put you over cap. Okay, and then over here on the right side is Tunnel Vision. Now this is a really interesting one. Tunnel Vision gives 4% toughness replenishment for each focus stack, and toughness replenishment is a multiplier to all gains of toughness. So let's go through the veteran tree really quickly and point out where we gain toughness. We gain 30% total toughness from confirmed kill here. Let's hypothetically say if we had the maximum 15 stacks of this, and therefore it's 4 times 15, that's 60% extra toughness replenishment. We're going to type times 30% by 1.6, which is 50%, right? 30 times 1.6. I got a calculator in front of me. 48%. So if you had full stacks here and you get a single kill on elite or specialist, over the next 10 seconds, you'll replenish an instant 16% toughness, and then over the next couple seconds, you'll replenish your 48% of your toughness, which is massive, right? And this is just really, really crazy when you look at like things like Out for Blood. It's going to multiply that. It's going to be 8% on any kill. You, instead of replenishing 5% per second here through Catch a Breath, are replenishing 8% per second. If you are using Executioner Stance instead of 10% per second with that toughness replenishment, it's going to be 16%. So this is massive. This is a huge, huge replenishment boost, and it really works well with a lot of veteran stuff. So don't sleep on this. And the only problem here is like that, you know, you're pretty deep in this tree, right? You need to be really capitalizing on this to be using this. And one thing this also does really, really well is note this thing down here: 10% stamina restored on ranged weak spot kills. Why would you want your stamina back when you're using a ranged weapon? Because normally you don't drain stamina when using a ranged weapon unless you're using dead shot, which drains stamina while you're holding down your aim and on every shot. So we can get our stamina back as we use it with this talent equipped, and that's going to allow us to break even and keep that dead shot 25% crit chance, which of course synergizes with finesse, because ranged crits are going to be augmented by that 112.5% finesse, and it just adds to being a massive, massive, massive DPS boost. So yeah, these two are a match made in heaven here. And so what would we use with Marksman's Focus? What sort of ranged weapons, because this is a ranged only Keystone, what sort of ranged weapons are the best with Marksman's Focus? Well, of course we have our quick draw stub revolver here. However, Quick Draw Stub Revolver is so goddamn powerful. It is already such a absolute, like, insane sniper rifle hand cannon of a weapon that this talent ends up being, in my opinion, like horrendous overkill. Just to give you some perspective, let's go ahead and like just shoot. Let's get our stacks up real quick. Let me quickly just reload. Also, this does give you reload speed, so it's actually very nice on this weapon. However, the damage is just so excessive that it just ends up being probably better to go somewhere else. So let's shoot this Chaos Spawn. He's got 17,500 HP, and we're shooting him for 4,200 damage on a headshot there. So imagine jumping a 4,200 damage headshot into anything else out here. What enemies like this? They have like 1,500 damage, like 1,000 health. So every time we shoot one of these guys, we're overkilling them for like 3,000 damage. For this weapon, it's just far too much damage. Yes, it'll allow you to absolutely blast on bosses and on crushers, right? However, just absolutely omega overkill for most other stuff. A weapon that does use this insanely well, though, is the infantry lasgun, because the infantry lasgun has some pretty like middle of the line numbers. Where's my infantry las? Right here. So it's got some pretty middle of the line numbers, as you can see when we inspect the breakdown here. You know, we're getting like 238, 327 on these critical weak spots. That's good. And when we upgrade that, that's going to be much, much higher. And this helps with reload. This helps with like recoil and regeneration. So yeah, this is a pretty good weapon. It's also very precise, so we can get those headshots. You want a weapon that is precise, that gets direct headshots. So of course, other weapons that are really, really good with this, the Hellbore is pretty freaking good with this, because Hellbore is all about getting those headshots. As you can see here, Hellbore headshots are very, very effective. Triple damage on critical weak spots against flak armored, 2.5x against unyielding. Carapace is lacking here, but that's okay, because we can add brittleness through Armor Bane. This might be a weapon where you might actually go for that 15% rending, but probably not still. But yeah, this is a really, really solid weapon. Any sniper style weapons, right? Any sniper style direct damage weapons that make good use of headshots, and especially if they make good use of criticals, if they're very, very high in that critical category. Now, what I don't recommend here are weapons like the Vigilant Autogun. I mean, I just generally don't recommend the Vigilant Autogun in general, because this weapon is very weak as compared to a lot of its other compatriots. But if we look at our masteries list, I would say that the Infantry Lasgun is your #1 choice on this list. The Quick Draw Stub Revolver is overkill here. The Shredder Auto Pistol is okay, I guess, with this one, but probably still not. And then the Heavy Las Pistol is excellent with this. Heavy Las Pistol has a great critical ratio, has great direct damage, and can very easily make effect of lots of stuff in this tree, including Shock Trooper here. As you can see on my Las Pistol build, I use this talent because it goes underneath Shock Trooper, and we get some massive, massive damage pumping out of that. So Heavy Las Pistol, definitely on the short list for this weapon. And Bolt Pistol is another great talent, or a great weapon for this down here, because this is going to increase our damage, and the Bolt Pistol is a slow reloader and just likes to hit hard and kill in one shot, so it could be very, very good there. And then in terms of weapon, and Spearhead Bolt Gun is pretty good as well. Spearhead Bolt Gun, because Spearhead Bolt Gun is a pretty good sniper weapon with high accuracy and does big headshots, but it's probably not exactly the weapon that you'd probably want if you are trying to go for a sniper style, because it does actually get a lot of benefit out of that 15% reload speed though. But the one weapon, I want to make some precautionary statements here. There's one weapon on here that's very powerful that I would recommend against using with this, and that would be the Recon Lasgun. The Recon Lasgun's most powerful way of building it is using the Infernus Blessing, which gives burn stacks. So a lot of enemies here are going to die from the burns and not from the direct damage from the headshots. And this is going to make it less valuable to get those headshots. Even though this weapon is very good at critting, very good at, pretty good at getting headshot damage, right? If we look at its damage profiles here, let's actually pull it up on a build that I already have it on. If we look at its damage profiles here, right, our crits are pretty effective, but they're not nearly as effective as some of those other categories. And also this weapon isn't pinpoint accurate. So it's unlikely that the direct hit that's going to land is going to be a headshot kill. It's probably going to die from the burn. It's probably going to die from a body shot or like a neck shot or a shoulder shot. So yeah, those would be my recommendations for there. So direct damage weapons with high precision that like crits, that like headshots, that is what you're going to be going for here. And extra bonus if you can make use of Deadshot in the same build. Let's move on to Focus Target, which is my personal favorite keystone in the veteran tree. Focus Target is a great all-rounder keystone. So this is a good fit in many builds because it is not like typed or stuck to any one particular weapon type. It gives general damage to everything. And general damage means like any source of damage, whether it's the burns or bleeds or soul blaze from a psyker or whatever it might be, right? A barrel exploding nearby, whatever that damage is, when that target is tagged with Focus Target, this is going to make them take extra damage from it. So the basics of Focus Target is that every 1.5 seconds you gain a stack. These go into your below your bar down here. You see them building up there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there we go. And I actually have a thing, talent below, which can give me 6 stacks. Okay, so what do these stacks do? Well, when you tag a target, it applies all the current stacks you have to them, and it resets your stacks to 1, which is important because that means if you want to get to maximum stacks, if you want to get back to 6 stacks, you don't actually have to wait 6 times 1.5 seconds. You end up only having to wait 5 times 1.5 seconds. So 7.5 seconds to get to the 5 more stacks, 1 plus 5 stacks back to 6. And when enemies are tagged, they take an additional 5% damage, up to 20% damage, or if you have this node right here with Focused Fire, it will make them take up to 6 stacks with 30% additional damage. So every stack they have on them is 5% additional damage, and this caps at 6. So yeah, we go from a target who's taking damage that looks like this. You see here, we're taking 376 on those hits, and then if we tag him up, our burns and our hits are doing 500. So that is the power here, is that this applies to all sources of damage coming into this target, and it lasts forever. As long as this target is tagged, they will take that additional damage. However, there's 2 other nodes here that require a little bit of thought. Now, the one that I almost never take is Target down here. When an enemy tagged with Focus Target dies, you and allies in Coherency restore per stack 5% toughness and 5% stamina. This is pretty good, right? If you have a fully stacked target, that's going to mean 30% toughness and 30% stamina. That could be pretty good. However, you know, the instant that the target goes down, there's a chance that someone's going to be missing 30% of their toughness? Sure, maybe, but probably not all that often. And I would highly doubt that considering I'm not, I would highly doubt that anyone viewing is enough of a person whose brain is actually on to be able to perceive, oh my god, my ally's toughness is chipped by 15%. Apply some stacks to that target. Okay, kill them so they get the toughness back. Like, that's a little bit much, right? If you want to do that sort of gameplay, I recommend just choosing Covering Fire up here, which replenishes 15% toughness to nearby allies when you kill them with a gunshot. And there you go. And that'll save you this talent point, which is Auxiliary. Now, the one you definitely want, though, if you were going for Focus Target, is Redirect Fire. Redirect Fire is when an enemy tagged with this Focus Target dies, you and allies in Coherency gain per stack 2.5% damage, and this lasts 10 seconds and stacks up to 6 times. So let me demonstrate how this works, because I didn't understand how OP this was until recently. So you'd think about it like, okay, if I apply just 1 stack to this target, right, and I kill him, I'm going to get 1 stack of that bonus damage. You can see it down there in the bottom left. Now I'm going to apply just 1 more stack to this guy, and I would think that it would just overlap it, but actually it adds to it. So if I apply my 4 stacks on this guy, I immediately jump to 6 stacks, and now it doesn't matter whether I'm applying 3 stacks or just 1 stack to targets. Every time I kill a target who has that focus target on them, it's going to refresh that buff for 10 full seconds. I will have 15% damage, and so will every ally in coherency with me, which is a huge damage increase across the whole team, right? It's one free talent point that everybody gets. And because this is in coherency, this whole talent in general has massive synergy with this tree because it's the leadership tree. We go Born Leader here, we increase our coherency radius by 50%. So now allies that are even further away are going to have that extra damage boost. They're going to be providing a much larger damage boost much more of the time. And this is huge impact. Plus the just general psychological effects of focus target, telling allies, okay, this target is highlighted in that particular yellow right there. That color means to kill that target and get the value on them. That is really good for coordinating teams. And it can allow you just that extra sort of focus of damage that it needs to burn down a larger target and get rid of them that much faster. So yeah, this is a really strong talent, and it's my pick when nothing else really fits. But the real thing that this talent is super strong at is multiplying all sources of damage. So if the weapons that you are using in your build, or if the thing you're using in your build isn't direct damage, but is instead just general damage like explosions, like burns, like bleeds, those sort of things are augmented only by the additional damage taken and flat damage that a talent like this provides. For a talent like Weapon Specialist, which we'll talk about in a second, it applies direct range damage or direct melee damage or direct melee buffs. This one applies direct range damage boosts and crit boosts, but this one applies boosts to all sources of damage. So when you're talking about weapons that can make use of this, the Combat Blade is a incredibly effective bleed applier, and bleeds are disgustingly powerful on this class. With this talent right here, Serrated Blade, we can get 16 stacks of bleeds and absolutely gut the enemies, no problem. We can also really stack burn stacks on targets with the Recon Lasgun through Infernus, which does, as you just saw in that boss a second ago, we could be doing 376 damage 2 times a second, but then we could tag them up and jump that to 500, so we can get an extra 30% damage out of all sources of damage, and this ends up adding up a lot on these types of weapons. So the main two that can really use that are our lovely Combat Blade, which is a very formidable weapon, and then over here it's the Recon Lasgun for that, but everything else can use it as well, right? Every other weapon here can get the benefits out of it. Those are just the weapons that specifically have these extra burn stacks, extra bleed stacks that will only get value out of this Keystone. And then the other type of build that gets value out of specifically this Keystone is Grenade Veteran. So if you're going for a build where you're using like a bolt pistol here with grenades, and you really want those grenades to get their maximal value, well then you have to choose Focus Target, because grenades don't scale off of any other type of damage. They only scale off of just flat damage buffs like Exploit Weakness here and Focus Target, which is going to cause the target to take extra damage. So you throw a grenade on a boss, which we can actually just demonstrate that here, right? This is a regular grenade in a boss. Okay, 7488. But what if I get a crit and then I focus target him? 11,000 damage. So like, yeah, we can hugely boost our damage with grenades by tagging these targets up, and that's like a minimal, like the lower end of what we could potentially be doing with some of these talents. So yeah, Focus Target, just great for augmenting other sources of damage on the class, not directly the weapons themselves most times. Now let's go on to the last one here, the Weapon Specialist. And this one is the trickiest of all because it has the most words, of course, but Weapon Specialist is really simple when you finally understand it. Weapon Specialist is all about swapping between your melee and your range really quickly. And in order to get the value out of it, what you have to do is you have to get either a melee or a range kill. So let's assume we get a melee kill. If we get a melee kill, we can stack this up to 10 times. And you can see it right here. It's this top, I can't go off this, but it's this top paragraph here. We're stacking range specialist every time we get a melee kill up to 10 times. And then when we swap to our range weapon, as long as that range weapon stays in our hand, we get those buffs in that top paragraph for the next 10 seconds. So we will get up to 20% reload speed, we will get up to 20% ranged attack speed, and we will get a 33% ranged crit chance on our next shot, our first shot out of the gun. And that's a guaranteed crit, meaning like obviously guaranteed at 3 stacks, because it's 33%, 33.3% on each. So yeah, you're guaranteeing a crit here. And I think out of those buffs, the reload speed is good and all, but the most powerful thing here is that ranged crit, that guaranteed singular ranged crit. That is so big, because on a lot of weapons that like this a lot, just 1 or 2 kills is boosting our crit chance by 66%. That means we have a massive chance to pop a crit when we swap out of here, because above this in the tree, we've got reciprocity, which is 5 to 25% crit chance. There's other crit chance boosts on your character, maybe even on your weapon. So if you are going for a weapon here that when it pops a crit, it's massive and it does something really special, well then, yeah, this could be a really good choice. And yeah, it's guaranteed after just like 2. It's guaranteed after 3, but like after 2, you're going to be pretty dang close. Now, on the flip side of that, when you swap to that ranged weapon and you shoot that crit and you get those kills, if you get any kill, even 1 ranged kill, now you have activated melee specialist the next time you swap to your melee weapon. So we'll swap to our melee weapon, and for the next 10 seconds, we're going to gain 15% melee attack speed, 10% dodge distance, and 10% dodge speed, which is really, really big because those things multiply with each other. So let me quickly demonstrate. Like this is my normal dodge, right? With my melee weapon, this is what it looks like. We can let's kind of measure it up here. We can dodge to about there, right? That's okay. We can dodge from this line to just about halfway there. However, get myself a little melee kill, and then like this is a pretty big increase. You can't really see it, but that's like 20% farther, maybe 25% farther than the previous dodge. So that adds a lot of mobility to slower weapons. And this obviously, if it's a faster weapon like the dueling sword, you're zooming around the place. And then that melee attack speed, 15% melee attack speed, is a really, really big buff. That's a direct buff, for a weapon like the power sword here. 15% melee attack speed increases the speed of all animations, charging it up, doing all these flourishes of blows, all that stuff. If you want to learn more about the power sword, by the way, I put a video out like a day or 2 ago about the power sword. Excellent weapon. So yeah, this is a really, really solid all-rounder buff to a ton of weapons on the class. And what you really want to make certain is that the weapon that you are using, you're spending a good amount of time on that melee weapon. This is a melee focus tree, as you can tell by the fact that this node at the top is a melee damage boost, 15% melee damage. And then the node right here, which you have to take, is a 10% melee critical chance boost with a 25% melee finesse bonus. So this tree right here is super oriented towards a veteran playstyle, which has a lot of focus on its melee weapon, and then occasionally you'll swap to your ranged weapon and pop off a couple of very powerful shots. Now, this is further augmented by the little nodes down here. What do we got? Invigorated. On activation, melee specialist grants you for 3 seconds 20% additional maximum stamina and 25% stamina cost reduction. So, what would this do for you effectively? Well, not much, honestly, in my personal opinion, because I can't really imagine a situation, but this would happen, by the way, when you swap from your range to your melee. It'll give you some of your stamina back, and it'll also make it so you use less stamina for the next couple of seconds, but there's not really a whole lot of crazy stamina usaging weapons in the veteran's arsenal. So you're not exactly starved for stamina in that case. And yeah, stamina is not a very valuable thing for the veteran in general when you're in the melee configuration. It's very valuable for Deadshot, but for melee, he's not exactly starved for it. So this one, I personally think is pretty much like not useful at all. However, On Your Toes here is excellent. Activating melee specialist or range specialist replenishes 20% toughness, cooldown 3 seconds each, which means that if you do either one of these things, if you get a melee kill and then swap to your ranged, it'll replenish 20% toughness, and then it starts a timer on that one. And then if you get a range kill and swap to your melee, you'll get 20% more toughness and start a timer on that one. And by the time you can do both of these, right, you probably refresh the first one. So ostensibly, every second and a half, you can replenish 20% toughness, or more accurately, every 3 seconds, you have a cap of 40% of your toughness you can replenish by quickly getting a melee kill and quickly getting a ranged kill and swapping back and forth. And this means that we end up generating a ton of toughness and maxing out. And this can be really cool when combined with a talent like Born Leader here, where 20% of the toughness that we replenish is granted to allies. So if we replenish 20%, this is 20% of 20%. So every time we get a kill and swap, we give our allies in coherency 4% toughness. Not bad, right? Swapping back and forth. But by far the most sort of build-defining node on this Keystone is right here. Always prepared. On activation, Range Specialist restores from reserves per stack 3.3% of your missing clip ammo up to 33%, rounded up. Okay, so what does this mean? This is a little bit weird to like vision wrap your head around, right? But what it's doing is every time you get a melee kill, you are adding a stack of ranged specialist, as we talked about earlier. And when you swap to your ranged, it takes your stacks and it will reserve, take from your reserve and add that back to your clip. And it rounds that up. And like this can replenish, like if we're using a weapon like, I don't know, like a recon lasgun, right? And we waste a bunch of ammo. I'm gonna waste about a third of my magazine here. Okay, so there you go. That's like a third of the magazine. And now I'm gonna get 10 melee kills. Okay, I'm gonna kill some lesser enemies, so this will take like 8 hours. Okay, one more. Okay, and then when I swap in here, we get 27 bullets, right? That's pretty dang good. I think that's reduced because, because I have a bunch of other multipliers. But yeah, it replenishes 33% of your clip. The base clip value, I believe, is what it is in order to get that. But you can see that's a pretty easy way to sustain a lot of ammo in your magazine. And this is incredibly effective for one weapon in particular on this class, which is the plasma gun. Because the plasma gun has a massive clip, or magazine, or whatever you want to call it for this thing. I don't know, energy cell. It has 135 in there, right? So because this weapon takes only 3 per light shot, or up to 9 or up to 8 per heavy shot, we'll end up shooting a bunch like this. And then, because this weapon has like an 8-hour reload speed, we don't want to do that. We just go and get some melee kills. And all the time, the weapon is cooling down in the backpack, and we're getting our melee kills, and then we swap over here, and we immediately gain 9 charge, and we get some melee kills, and we charge it up again. And just as long as you're remembering to quickly swap like that, you can get a couple ammo back in there at a time and build back up your ammo reserves here without ever having to reload this weapon and do that long ass animation. And this is like a very common way to use it. Another way that this is commonly used is on the low end of that, right? Because this replenishes 3.3% of your missing clip ammo rounded up, that means it always replenishes at least 1. So for my build here, I'm using the revolver, right? Now, normally the revolver is like, okay, I'm shooting, and I gotta reload, and it takes like 8 hours, right? But if I shoot a shot, and then I get a kill, then when I go back, it just replenishes that 1 bullet. It will always give me at least 1 bullet every time I swap back from getting a melee kill. And this has extra synergy here, because when I swap back, I'm getting an extra 33% crit chance. And this weapon here has 60% rending on a crit. So I really want to get a crit because it allows me to dome a crusher, like guaranteed. So all I got to do with a weapon like this is I got to quickly get a couple kills, like two melee kills right here. And then when I swap to this, I'm guaranteed that that's going to be a crit and it's going to do massive damage. And that's the focus with the Keystone like this, is to replenish just 1 bullet every so often, so I can just get a melee kill, get a ranged kill, get a melee kill, get a ranged kill, get a melee kill, get a ranged kill, etc. And then I can literally sit on 0 bullets like this. I can shoot all my bullets out, and now every time I get a melee kill, I have a bullet. Oh, if I actually got the kill, I have a bullet. I got a kill. Oh, I didn't get the kill again, and then I got a bullet. Right? That's how you play with a weapon like this. So yeah, replenishing the last bullet in your magazine is very useful as well. So in terms of how to use this Keystone, because this Keystone is so heavily focused around direct melee damage, some really solid ones to use here are, of course, your combat axe, your tactical axe, your dueling sword, your power sword, your power falchion, your sapper shovel. Really, all the melee focused stuff on the class is going to be super solid with this talent. But in terms of range weapons that make very good use of those range stacks, of being able to get a guaranteed crit, of being able to get increased reload speed, or being able to replenish 1 bullet into the magazine and quickly drop their damage, it's the quick draw stub revolver. It's the bolt pistol to some extent. It's the double-barreled shotgun for sure. It's the combat shotgun and the plasma gun, because it's going to be replenishing that big ass power cell. And there you go. So that is the rundown on all the keystones. I hope it helped. I hope the timestamps helped. I hope you noticed the timestamps, or maybe you watched the whole thing and enjoyed. Either way, thank you for tuning in with me here, and let me know what you want to see next. I've been Mr. E, I guess, and I'm out of here. Bye-bye.